Global consumer product supply chains are by their very nature complex. In an ever-competitive environment, executives need supply chains that are consumer-centric with lower operational costs meeting strict quality and compliance requirements. Going direct and building a core competency in global sourcing and private label development is a key strategy. To deliver on their company's global sourcing and private label strategies, buyers face increased pressure to buy products at profitable margins. The complexity is amplified by a lack of tools and dispersed geographical teams and time zones. With longer lead times, delivering on time becomes harder, making communication critical. By blurring the line between retail buying and product design, private label development requires a whole new set of skills and tools. Scaling the sourcing organization becomes pivotal, but adding resources and manual reporting eventually reach a breaking point. What is lacking is a control tower to ensure suppliers are identified, onboarded, and audited. Timely requests for quotations are sent out, landed costs are calculated, selections are made, and showrooms are put together to accommodate buyers. Private label development is a complicated business. Quality managers work with suppliers and third-party quality service providers to ensure products meet high regulatory, brand quality, and compliance standards. There are thousands of shipment bookings to keep track of, complex tariff schedules, and the need to fulfill multiple delivery channels. Delivering on time and on cost is difficult without tools providing visibility and control over the entire process. The CBX Cloud platform helps you manage supply chain complexity by automating, orchestrating, and simplifying how you do business with your supply chain partners. From plan to pay, CBX enables you to deliver products on time and on cost to all your selling channels. CBX clients include many of the world's most successful retailers, brands, trading companies, and importers. To learn more about how to radically improve your global supply chain, contact us now for a test drive.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining today's webinar hosted by CBX Software and SGS. My name is Vander Huang and I'm the Marketing Director for CBX Software and also the moderator for today's session. Now we're very excited to have a range of different retailers, brands and consultants and other service providers in today's session. This webinar is part of our ongoing global sourcing thought leadership efforts, which focuses on providing actionable insights in terms of improving your sourcing, quality, and supply management programs. Now let's just start with some household rules. Now the webinar will run for about 40 minutes. Now we will record the webinar and it will be available for download about 2 to 3 weeks after the event. All attendees will be muted during the webcast. And if you have any questions regarding the webinar, please do not hesitate to contact me on the email address on the screen. Now, before we actually start the webinar, I just want to quickly introduce our speakers. We're very lucky to have Rob Parrish. Rob is an authority on quality assurance and quality control across many sectors. Now, he is currently the Managing Director at SGS Hong Kong. SGS, for those who don't know, is the world's leading inspection, verification, testing, and certification company. The company is recognized as the global benchmark for quality and integrity. Our second speaker is Eric Linkswater. Eric has over 20 years experience working with lead cloud and SaaS providers, supporting retailers with workflow process management towards increased profitability. Now, on that note, I'm just going to pass it to Rob and let him take it from here.
Thank you, Mander, and good day to you all. It's very true that in recent times, retail has continued to become a much more complex environment for both sourcing and sales. This has been driven by a substantial number of factors, including the changing demographics and age of the consumers, the way that they source their products, be it through the internet, be it through taking a heavy look at user reviews before making their buying decisions. However, at the other end of the supply chain, there is a lot of changes as well, driven by the rising costs of labor in some countries, resulting, and quite often you're seeing a shift of sourcing to new countries. All this coupled with the growth in e-commerce really is changing the retail environment. This increased speed and need for speed to market while ensuring that products meet regulatory and consumers' requirements is really more challenging than it ever has been. The evolution of quality in retail has been going on for many years. For many, many years, it was more inspection of product to ensure that the commercial risk had been addressed prior to products being shipped from the manufacturing country to the sales country. However, in about the mid-2000s, there was a large movement, mainly driven by government at that time, to move more from inspection into testing. Many of you will remember the lead in paints and lead in other children's toys, which perhaps was one of the main factors that drove this change in the market from the inspection more to the testing. These are really quality controls, okay? And quality control is really a reactive approach to ensuring that products that are manufactured have a reasonable level or an acceptable level of quality and of safety. It's really an end of production approach, which means that the product is being inspected or tested far too late in the process. At this point, not much can be done to the product. It's really a reject if it's no good, or a ship it if it is good. This gives us numerous issues with regards to not being able to deliver quantities for retailers. It means that we either have an immense amount of rework to do on products, and in many cases the product cannot be reworked, therefore it is scrapped. So there's a lot of economical issues from the manufacturer right on through to the retailer. In many cases, this quality control in fact adds additional time into the sourcing process. And in today's environment where sourcing time has to be reduced, companies need to reassess how we're addressing the quality and safety of products and work on processes rather than after the event to assure quality and safety rather than check for it. If we look at the definition for quality control, and on screen is just a very short definition, it really is a process of inspecting or testing a product to ensure that they meet the required quality and or safety standards. These standards are often set by regulatory bodies, but quite often are also adapted and further enhanced by the retailers. However, again, quality control is something that happens at the end of the process where you're not able to actually decide on what changes need to be made to allow product to be shipped. There are also other issues that need to be thought about when it comes to the quality control on products. In an attempt to reduce shipment delays, many companies have actually moved towards first produced product testing or inspection. And in this case, the sample first off production line may be taken and inspected or tested for compliance to specifications and regulatory requirements, with an assumption that the remainder of production will in fact meet those same requirements. However, we've noticed there are quite some concerns with the testing of this first product or first manufactured product, and concerns that retailers, agents, and others in the supply chain do need to think about quite seriously. Some of the concerns that we come across is, was the sample provided for testing really the same sample that has been shipped? In other words, is the sample truly representative of that shipment? In many cases, the provided sample may actually be of better quality or have better safety, or in fact, sometimes it may be made from different raw materials. And this is really a huge concern, as we know that manufacturing is quite often done by batches. Batches will require different ingredients or different raw materials. And it's very important to know that the whole shipment has been made from the same type of raw materials and indeed gone through the same type of process. The reason I say process is that processing can vary from day to day based on numerous items, be it equipment malfunctions and breakdowns, staff that are working on a process, or just a change in the raw materials that are coming into a process. So we seriously do need to consider, is this product that I'm taking first off the line, or the sample that's been provided to me, is it really representative of the shipment that I'm going to be taking? And I can assure you that many times we have come across problems where it is not the same. We do see many issues on this non-compliant product being shipped, and we've got a number of incidents where products actually being recalled after being placed on the shelf or the retail shelves as a result of, perhaps interventions, one-off interventions too early in the process. What we've started to see recently is a movement to risk-based quality control. And while this is certainly helpful to many, it creates some of its own problems. As regulators have become more strict and manufacturers and retailers have seen the increased cost of compliance, everybody has looked for ways to ensure that they're spending the right amount of money in the most effective areas within the supply chain to assure product quality and safety. However, this is also coming at a time where retail profits continue to decline. The introduction of risk-based quality control programs, including perhaps skipped inspections or acceptance of previous test reports as the quality control point for a new batch of product, can create numerous problems. And numerous retailers and buyers around the world have been caught out from time to time. It's very important to know that while cost savings are often behind the driver to the implementation of these risk-based quality control programs, we really need to assess if they're adequate to ensure that the right quality or high quality product that is compliant with the regulatory or import needs and regulations, whether it's there. And sometimes cost savings are not an investment. Sometimes the cost savings at an early stage of production or prior to shipment can result in substantial cost savings, or not cost savings, but it's substantial costs and issues to do with recall later in the process. So there is an ongoing change right now where quality control and risk-based inspection or test solutions are actually starting to migrate towards quality assurance. And on screen, you'll see slight differences between what quality control means and what quality assurance means. Most important aspects are really that if you think about it, quality control starts after production when everything has been produced, and it's a gatekeeper to ensure that only good product is really shipped to the market. Whereas quality assurance actually starts way back in the process, quite often before production, and continues throughout production, where quality assurance is trying to ensure that bad things don't happen. Sure, people are people and accidents do happen, but we can definitely say that quality assurance is working on the process to ensure the quality and safety of product that is going to be shipped, where quality control is really the inspection and segregation of good or bad product. For those that aren't familiar, there's a short definition of what quality assurance is about, and those that are aware of standards like ISO 9001 or 14000 will understand that quality assurance is really a process. It's really the definition is all those planned and systematic actions necessary to provide adequate confidence that a product will in actual fact fulfill the requirements for quality and or safety. Now, those requirements are set by the government, the buyers, or other people that are in the supply chain. It does not necessarily mean that quality assurance will guarantee high quality. It means that there's a higher likelihood or assurance that a product will meet those requirements for quality and safety. Quality assurance in sourcing is really a proactive approach to addressing quality and safety. As I mentioned, it really needs to start very early in the beginning of the sourcing process, even before the product is manufactured. I'll go through a slide in a few moments and talk about the interactions within the supply chain. But it's very important that the unstated as well as the stated requirements and expectations for a product are fully understood right from day one by all parties, and that an appropriate control plan is designed to ensure that that product is going to meet its requirements or expectations, be them regulatory or consumer expectations. Quality does not necessarily mean high quality, but quality can also include functionality. Does it actually work as intended? Quality assurance really is a process approach where you're looking at objectives and looking at points in a process to ensure that defects are not created, are not expanded, that basically defects don't enter into our supply chain or onto the product. It helps to ensure that non-complying product is actually taken out of the process much earlier on. It avoids an extreme cost of rework, which is a cost saving for the manufacturers. It also helps to reduce the possibility of late or even non-delivery of product to retail, and it also helps to avoid a potentially very expensive process of product recall should it end up having to be recalled. A lot of people are saying to me these days, well, so how do I make quality assurance really happen in retail? We believe that we've got a good process. What should we be doing differently? And I tell them that there's a few things that you need to be considering and things you need to be looking at to really make it work. For quality assurance to be really implemented in retail sourcing, we need to make some fundamental changes. We need to think a little bit outside the box and look at more effectively spending the quality control or quality assurance budgets in those areas where it should really be spent. We've got to spend more time at the commencement of the production line or of the concept of the product, looking at the design, looking at the concepts, ensuring that there's a higher likelihood that the product that's going to be produced will end up meeting the regulatory and customer requirements. It's very, very important that we maintain a more accurate information on supplier statuses, their audits, the inspections that have been done, and test results of similar product from that manufacturer or even from that region. And all these are then used for a better risk-based approach to quality assurance and ensuring that the product quality and safety is going to meet requirements. We definitely need to implement more precise controls at specific points in the process and spend more time on specific or higher risk products and even higher risk suppliers. There's a lot of overlap these days in the different players or actors inside the supply chain, and it's really important that we reduce these overlaps and that the money that can be saved from reducing overlaps are spent in other areas to actually, as I mentioned, to ensure that the product is going to meet its required requirements. Product control or production control of raw materials is really important. You know, we've seen numerous incidents where different types of raw materials are used in the same large quantity or large batches of product being produced, where some product meets the regulatory requirements and others do not. For example, a change in temperature or change in raw materials can make plastic more brittle. In a children's toy, more brittle plastic may result in, when the toy falls over or is knocked off a table, it can break. Small components, sharp edges can be ingested by children. So raw materials and constant process are hugely important to ensuring safe product that meets the regulatory and consumers' requirements. What we don't see a lot of these days is a lot of lot of people looking at the customer returns and customer complaints information and taking that information back into product design, design stages, and when you go to order new product, looking at what the issues have been in the past and making sure that these have been adequately addressed to ensure that they don't happen again. There's a lot of information out there, and we're definitely seeing that it cannot be done without a good structure. A lot of information in a quality assurance program, and quite often it cannot be done manually. It's going to require an IT tool to really capture the results of, or the data from the various interventions, as well as that data from the customers, their complaints or even returns, and then be able to use that data in the development of better control plans that are more risk-based, ensuring that future orders of the same product don't have the same problems. On screen is a little chart that we use to depict perhaps the sourcing process. And there's many outputs of different interventions that happen throughout the supply chain that need to be looked at again later when either product is being produced again, new orders, or items that have been identified at one step that need to be further verified later in the process. The most important thing on this chart is that the data from the decisions to buy, or the creations of the control plans, or the inline controls and inspections that are done, is captured so that this information can be later used. It can be used by merchandisers, by the retail QA teams or third parties to actually look at the risks and ensure those risks are minimized. Again, post-retail activities or surveillance is hugely important. That means that when product arrives in the distribution centers, is it still compliant? Has there been no temperature abuse? Are there no mold spores growing on leather products? And then looking at the data that's coming back from consumers. All this needs to be captured. And honestly, if you don't have a very good product life cycle management tool, it's going to be very difficult to do. There are a lot of benefits in adopting a more quality assurance approach to retail sourcing rather than quality control. It is a more scientific and fact-based approach to risk management. It is taking money from some areas of the process and reinvesting it in other areas where issues can be identified much earlier and resolved earlier. It's better to have a short product run and identify problems on 500 pieces than it is to find problems in 50,000 pieces at the end of a production run. Quality assurance does give you a higher likelihood that the product is going to meet its regulatory and or consumer requirements. Like anything in life, there's no guarantees. But quality assurance is a process that has been adapted by many industries since, World War II. And it's a process of helping to ensure that the part that goes into a motor vehicle or an item that is being purchased is similar quality, same size, same dimensions, and same functionality as we purchased last time or we expect to use this time. More effective risk-based management and continuous improvement processes can certainly help to improve the supply chain, and it can definitely help to minimize consumer returns or customer returns and even product recalls. We all know how expensive a product recall can be. And instead of having product recalls, we could invest some of that money that goes into the product recalls to ensure that they don't happen. Quality assurance really is a strategic approach on the supply chain and in the supply chain to assure that the product is going to meet quality and safety requirements, using resources where they need to be used to mitigate those potential risks and to try and assure that the product is going to go to market on time. So it's a process where you're not relying on end of production inspection and testing when, as I mentioned, it's all too late. So in summary, you could say that it's potentially going to reduce costs, it's going to lead to more consistent and potentially higher quality product, should help to lower returns, and should actually help retailers to increase their market share and their profits. Some key considerations as a wrap-up slide. To ensure that you have a robust quality assurance program in retail, you need to take into consideration some key items. You definitely need to establish a system that links inputs and outputs across the complete supply chain. Whether it is a consumer return for a product that doesn't work or a regulatory failure, you need to take these items back into the supply chain and look for ways to ensure it does not happen again. You need to implement a tool across the complete integrated supply chain that looks at critical paths for shipment and ensures that certain things are done on time or within time to ensure that a product is going to ship on time. Again, it's no good having a production run overrun for time, then an inspection at the end where we're trying to segregate good from bad, and then you only end up with 25 or 50% of the product being shipped. That's really a problem. Implementing front-loaded services that reduce the reliance on sort of the end-of-line inspection and the use of golden samples, as we call them, or the samples that are provided for an inspection or test, can really help to assure what is happening in the process, rather than hoping it's going to be okay. You definitely need to ensure that you have a system that captures post-retail customer feedback, and that this is looked at in a consistent manner. Very important that when you're redesigning a product, that these customer requirements are taken into account. If it doesn't work, a customer is not going to be buying it. It's very important that you build up knowledge of your products and your suppliers, and that you use this knowledge in the most effective way when making sourcing decisions and developing effective control plans. There's so much information that would be created in a quality assurance program that it would be a very heavy manual system. Automation and integration with probably some good IT tools would be a very good step forward. I hope that you enjoyed the introduction, and I'll pass it back to Manda for the next stage of the webinar.
Okay, thank you, Robert. That was very insightful. Without further delay, I would like to pass it back to Eric Linkswater. Eric is our VP of Business Development, and he will be talking about how CBX Cloud can help with respect to quality and compliance. Eric?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Rob and Mander, for passing the baton over. And certainly it's a good transition here. Rob gave us some tremendous insights about process and concept and strategy. And he often alluded to tools, and tools that not only potential inspectors would need, but also the retail and brand clients. And that's really, in short, what CBX is built to do. CBX is an application delivered in the cloud that serves to ensure that everyone has the right information to support their everyday decisions, which are meant to dramatically improve operational efficiencies, and of course all those areas around quality assurance that Rob introduced to us. Mander, if you could move to the next slide. I pulled one of Rob's images here from about halfway through his presentation to illustrate what really got me excited about doing this webinar with SGS and Rob's team. I believe that we have a very clear state of synergy and shared belief in our thoughts and in our learnings, and certainly in the tools that would be required to provide to our joint customers in achieving the world-class standards that they would need around quality assurance, as Rob has described it. And I'm going to lean on these concepts over the course of just the next few minutes as I share a little bit more about the CBX platform with you. Mander? Rob mentioned often throughout his presentation that in order to make quality assurance happen, quality assurance must be a proactive process that starts at the very beginning of the overall product development and sourcing process. He also alluded to, but maybe didn't call it out specifically, but it's inherent that in order for things to start early, you have to have clear lines of communication across all inter and intra-department stakeholders. The quality assurance process, as Rob described, runs throughout the entire product life cycle in the best organizations. But inherently, that's not how you work. If you are using spreadsheets and email and phone calls and faxes to try to communicate amongst each other and then across teams, you're creating gaps in your communication. You're creating gaps in redundant and overlapping activities. You're creating gaps in the fact that you're opening and merging and searching for data in various data sources. And all of this lead-in and lead-out activity leads to an inefficient operation in which you cannot achieve the levels of world-class quality assurance that Rob has been alluding to, that we obviously must need. So, how do you do it? Well, Rob alluded to some tools, and if we move on to the next slide, I'd like to introduce the CBX platform as a potential tool, or one potential tool, that could help in your process. The diagram that you see before you is not meant to be a comprehensive illustration of the CBX platform, but rather it's supposed to help illustrate that the platform itself does exactly what Rob recommends. We need to have involvement, transparency, communication, collaborative effort, and a critical path management tool that spans from initial product ideation and planning and specification into sourcing, through WIP, and into your final inspections, and finally into your container. As you'll see in the middle of this diagram, you kind of focus your eyes in the middle of the page, quality management, vendor management, material management span almost 70% of the process. And it begins early, and it continues on through the process until very late. Most organizations don't illustrate their process in this way, and they certainly don't have a tool that stitches all of this together into one seamless, transparent platform for all stakeholders to participate in. Mander, if you move to the next page, I'd like to share with you a few examples of how CBX can help in these areas. As I mentioned to you, CBX is a cloud-based application tool. You're looking at a home page of a user after they've immediately logged into the CBX application. One of the things that Rob alluded to often is that multiple people crossing multiple activities or multiple job roles need to have a nice social collaboration tool at their fingertips in order to avoid potential catastrophic failure in achieving quality assurance. On the right-hand side of the screen, Mander, as you move to the next slide, you'll notice that there is a running reel, several faces there. Those are all individual users that are logged into the system, and they have the opportunity to use a social collaboration forum tool to ask each other certain questions, request documentation, check the status of various activities as they relate to individual operations throughout the product lifecycle management operation. These social collaboration tools are able to take you directly to a problem. Mander, if you'll take me to the next slide. Directly to a problem without having to rely on or realizing those gaps in communication that you saw on a previous slide that I showed. a hyperlink in one of my threaded conversations myself without even contacting the source of the conversation and be taken to the record in question. Now I'm empowered to be able to respond to the question, give advice, give guidance, and in essence continue to move the process along, even if I'm making those decisions from the United States and my inspections are happening out of my operations throughout Asia. A couple more examples if we move forward, Mander. A couple more examples of the use of some tools that Rob alluded to that we would need. In fact, he called it out and said, we should implement front-loaded services that reduce the reliance on final random inspection and the use of golden samples. Well, that's a very nice concept and certainly one that I believe in as well. But we have to make the data collection effort as simple as possible so that we can encourage multiple inspections or more proactive and dynamic communication throughout the quality assurance program. One way to do this is through the introduction of mobile tools. Having the opportunity to download inspection bookings onto a tablet, carry that tablet out into the factory, perform inspections, and then synchronize that data in real time over cellular or Wi-Fi back to a centralized database where all users and all job roles and all critical parties have access to the data immediately to make good decisions. If we have these kind of tools to help simplify the data collection, then we can begin to move towards a more world-class quality assurance program like the one Rob alludes to. Mander, we're going to finish up now with just 2 or 3 more slides if you'll move to the next one. I want to wrap up with the concept of critical path management. Directly from that same home screen I opened with, you saw at the lower right-hand portion of the screen a small dashboard with indicators tied back to critical path management reports. I have a specific report on the next screen that I'd like to share. Mander. You can create a critical path management dashboard on the CBX platform for any group of activities. For example, we just saw an item and all the activities associated with that item so that we can begin to get visibility very early on in the specification process, as Rob suggested we should. We bounced forward then, and we see that we can also have a critical path around the actual purchase order, manufacturing process, or WIP. There are things that are happening related to quality compliance and assurance throughout the manufacturing process, and we need to know if we are meeting those individual requirements or not, and if we're not meeting them, we need to know well in advance so that we can perform activities to help put ourselves back on track for on-time shipments, which takes me to the next screen. Mander will wrap with the last screen on shipments here. As I mentioned, you can have a critical path management report on any set of activities, and as they tie back to critical quality assurance, you can be assured that your shipments are actually leaving the factory on time, getting to port on time, and ultimately getting to your stores and to your customers on time. So hopefully this has provided you with a little bit of insight of some of the tools in the platform that's available to you. And I would wrap up with just a few high-level numbers on my last slide. Most importantly, with the CBX platform, coupled with the professional services, the insight, the consulting, and the guidance that an organization such as SGS provides, you should be hoping for nothing less than to protect your brand with 100% compliance. Certainly a lofty goal, but a goal that we should all aspire to. Additionally, Rob alluded to how implementing a world-class quality assurance program leads to business growth. We're able to scale our own brand and our direct sourcing activities, which drive margin. We're able to compress lead times, which drive margin. And we're able to realize on-time and full service levels, which drive margin. All of these things critically important to maintaining the health of your business. So this will begin to wrap up our webinar for today. And on behalf of Rob, Mander, and myself, we certainly want to thank you for attending. We trust that you found our learnings to be helpful. We certainly welcome questions via the email addresses that you see on screen here. The webinar is going to be available in a recorded fashion for download or for sharing on our website. And we would look forward to having you to continue to attend our webinars in the future. Thank you for your attention. Have a good day.